Good afternoon, everyone. I'll let people trickle into the room, but welcome to the CTL at Weill Cornell Medicine Special Panel. Our special panel series is a time to convene experts and people to share special insights on healthcare-related innovation and entrepreneurship initiatives that are particularly relevant to the Weill Cornell Medicine campus, faculty and trainees, but a much broader audience. So my name is Lisa Placanica. I'm Senior Managing Director for CTL for the Weill Cornell Medicine campus. So we handle all intellectual property for the medical campus and our sister institution in Qatar, so everything healthcare related. And I'm excited to be here today with a panel of expert women innovators, investors, and industry executives who are happy to share their insights on women's health, where it is, where it's going, what's needed, and how to fund and partner in that space. And we thought, really, what better way to celebrate Women's History Month than a discussion on women's health and how to address conditions that solely, disproportionately, and differentially affect women. But before we start, wanted to put a little bit of historical context to our discussion, particularly related to Cornell University and Weill Cornell Medicine's commitment to supporting women innovators in any field and commitment to women's health. So in keeping with the Cornell University mission of any person, any study, in 1870, Cornell University admitted the first female student and was one of the first Ivy League institutions to do so. In 1898, the Cornell University Medical College, which is what Weill Cornell Medicine used to be known as, was established with a 9.5% female student body at a time when few medical colleges accepted any women. In 1899, the Cornell University Medical College merged with the Women's Medical College of New York Infirmary for Women and Children. So the Women's Medical College in New York Infirmary was established by Elizabeth Blackwell, who was the first woman to earn a medical degree in the United States. And it was really focused on educating women clinicians and caregivers and dedicated to addressing women's health and children's health needs. At the time of the merger in 1899, this brought the female student body of Weill Cornell or Cornell University Medical College to 33%, which I think is amazing. That's not so far off of what the percentage now is, but this was a full 2 decades before women even had the right to vote. Emily Beringer was a Cornell University and a Cornell University Medical College graduate. She was the first woman to secure a surgical residency in the United States, and she was the first woman to serve as an ambulance surgeon serving in World War I. She went on to become the attending gynecological surgeon at New York Women's Infirmary, or the New York Infirmary for Women and Children, specializing in venereal diseases. In 1920, the Pap smear to detect cervical cancer was invented by George Papanicolaou at Cornell University Medical College. 1974, Dr. Bridge Saxon developed a test to measure HCG, which became the first at-home pregnancy test. In 1986, Cornell University Medical College launched an in vitro fertilization program, which quickly grew into the world-class Center for Reproductive Medicine under the direction of Dr. Zev Rosenmax. In 1994, we opened our Center for Women's Healthcare, which is now known as the Iris Cantor Women's Health Center. And as part of our We Are Changing Medicine campaign, women's health is a key research priority area for the university for investment into research and development. So with that, we have a long history of supporting women innovators at Cornell and Weill Cornell and commitment to women's health. So I'm very excited today for this panel with esteemed colleagues. With that, we can do a round of introductions. I would like Tamatha Fenster to give her introduction.
After that background, I could not be more proud to say what I'm about to say. So I'm Dr. Tamatha Fenster. I'm a minimally invasive gynecologic surgeon here at Cornell, and I specialize in robotic and laparoscopic surgery. I'm also the Director of Innovations for our Fibroid Center. I have a particular passion for innovation in women's healthcare and inventions. I have 2 on the market and some in the wings waiting to come. And it is such a delight to be here today with these incredible powerhouse women and discuss such near and dear topics to my heart as women's healthcare and innovation. So thank you so much for having me today.
Great, thank you, Tamatha. Vrunda?
Hi, I'm Vrunda Desai. I am an OBGYN by training, also a minimally invasive and robotically trained surgeon like Dr. Fenster. And I really love the background that you also gave about how Cornell has really supported women and women's health, because I too was at Cornell many, many years ago. I did my residency training at Cornell before I went to both fellowship, private practice, and then academic practice. I'm still affiliated with Yale School of Medicine as an adjunct professor, but my full-time job is I'm the global head of medical affairs at Cooper Surgical. And Cooper Surgical is a company dedicated to a world of healthy women, babies, and families. And we're solely a women's health company. And it's really exciting to be here and be part of Cooper Surgical and be the medical voice at Cooper Surgical, because we really have a wide range of products that are globally really impactful. So we have products that are in the office suite, anything from colposcopy, HPV, pap smear testing, to EndoC, which allows us to look inside the uterus and find fibroids, and going into the labor and delivery suite, where we have products that help with actually delivering babies for moms, and products that help the babies once they're born. Also, we are the leader in fertility care. We make media and different devices. So, tied into Dr. Rosenlax's Fertility Institute at Cornell as well. And then we also have a new arm to our armamentarium of women's health training practice needs, and that's Generate Life Sciences, where we work with embryo and mostly stem cell and tissue banking. So we definitely have a very wide portfolio of medical devices. We also have Paragard. I could keep going on and on about all of the different products, but again, our commitment really is to women's health, and we were really excited to have me be part of this panel so I can talk to you guys about where we think women's health is going and how we can continue to work together to make sure that women's health continues to get funding and innovation as it needs.
Sabrina?
Hi, similarly, just loved all the background on the great things the institution has done, and I'm so excited to be part of this panel as well. So Sabrina Martucci Johnson, I'm founder and CEO of a company called Dare Bioscience. We're also focused solely and squarely on women's health, really with a focus on drug development and really purposely accelerating opportunities that really can enhance innovation for women, enhance outcomes, enhance convenience in a wide variety of indications across women's health, right now focused primarily in contraception, vaginal health, sexual health, and fertility. But within each of those, sometimes with multiple programs in development, and our portfolio ranges from preclinical stage programs all the way through to we have our first product that's FDA approved as well. And, part of why I started the company was, one, obviously I'm passionate about women's health, but really because saw this nice opportunity for a company that could have partnering, have her, the woman, and partnering kind of core to its mission and vision of how it operates. And so we really rely as a company on partnerships with institutions like this, to bring in products to our portfolio where we can add value by advancing them through development and applying funding. We're a publicly traded company in a way that maybe can be challenging. So always love being parts of these conversations about how do we get, innovation moving forward, because it's definitely core to what we're passionate about at Dare.
Thank you, Sabrina. Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria Velissaris. I am a serial entrepreneur and founding partner of Steel Sky Ventures. We invest in companies that create better access, care, or outcomes in women's healthcare. So excited to be here today with all of these wonderful women, excited to share a little bit more about the trends that we're seeing in the market, some of the ideas around investing that have been shifting in women's health over the last few years, and about some of the wonderful companies that we're seeing in the market.
Great, thank you all. For our attendees, there is the question and answer function that's available. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them. I think we're trying to address those more toward the end of the discussion. So with that, let's dive in. I think let's start with a bit of a historical perspective. Vrunda, Cooper Surgical was established in 1990. It's almost a legacy company in women's health at a time when many other companies were maybe not so focused. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of when and where things have started to shift in the excitement around women's health as a I'll call it a commercial opportunity in an area that's ripe for innovation and disruption?
I mean, I think that for far too long, right, women's health was kind of a secondary focus, both for innovators, researchers, but also investors. And I think that, as we as a society have started focusing more on women in general, but women's health specifically, we've been seeing more of a trend toward people really looking at different opportunities for innovation, but also improving efficiencies in care, safety of care, and all of the different things that throughout medicine we really look to improve outcomes for patients and healthcare in general. It's been really exciting that for the past maybe even 5 to 10 years, if you really want to stretch it, but probably even just the past few years, we've seen a lot more excitement in this space, which is really, really wonderful. I think a lot of it took time, right? We needed to get first the, people in healthcare to be cognizant of the fact that we have different needs, and then move that to researchers having interest. And then how do we fund those researchers? So then going to the NIH and public places to get funding, but then having that focus really also sparked the interest of investors and private investors to continue to take that next step into saying, this is really important. Let me put my dollars behind this as well. So it's been a great kind of path to see that, especially really ramping this last couple of years and seeing the commitment both from small but also large companies to say, this is definitely an area that we need to continue to focus on and continue to invest in.
Great. Sabrina and Maria, I mean, does that kind of comport with what you've been seeing as a new investor in this space? And Sabrina, I suppose Dari maybe wasn't established all the way back in 1990. So
No.
kind of, how do you start to ride that wave?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I like to think that obviously we were a little bit ahead of the game. But I'm so thrilled that the world is catching up, right? So because we started the company in 2015 and we went public in 2017. And definitely at the time, quite frankly, the conversations were a lot more challenging than they are today, right? Today, we can go into a room and people might not have heard of some of the indications that we're addressing, like female sexual arousal disorder or why hormone-free contraception, or, we might still have to do some education, or bacterial vaginosis, which is our approved indication, but they're open to the conversation, right? And they're starting to see things that in the investment community, people like to see, right? Which are transactions, right? They like to see that they're going to make an investment in a category that is going to be, rewarded. And I think what's been interesting about women's health that we're finally all waking up to, and I really appreciated Vrunda's comments, which are, a lot of these indications are not life-threatening, but they're life-altering, right? And so the product profile that you're delivering, that convenience, right? How it impacts outcomes is so meaningful to her. And the market does reward products that improve those things for her. So it's great to see that, finally the pace is picking up. And I do think that, several years from now, and hopefully not too many, right? Maybe it's a few, we're going to look back and say, oh yeah, duh. This makes a lot of sense. We're half the population and over 80% of the decision makers on medical care. So.
Maria, so your Steel Sky Adventures is new-ish, right? So can you talk about a little bit how you got people to say, I'm going to invest in you to be able to invest in women's health? Like, what were some of the key changes in the near past in women's health that kind of enabled you to be able to start Steel Sky?
Well, I had been investing personally as an angel since 2016, and I just saw a huge opportunity that people weren't looking at, right? So I started funding 1, 2, then I had funded 7 women's health companies, and there was a line out the door, and there weren't dollars going in. And so I saw this as a clear gap and opportunity in the market, and so I was able to kind of take that thesis and raise a fund off of it. There would only been a handful of women's healthcare focused funds, and a lot of them do focus on reproductive health, or, what we think is that there's an opportunity to infuse better outcome for women across a lot of indications, across digital health, across medical devices. And so we're really excited that we have kind of a broader perspective, and we were able to sell that, but also to tell them, yes, you haven't seen multiple billion-dollar exits, but you will, and it's coming. And it's people like us that are going to be well positioned to find it, because who better to understand endometriosis, PCOS than women, right? And so when the founders are coming to us, they're like, oh my goodness, thank you for being able to understand and not challenge us that these things are an issue. You understand firsthand postpartum depression, what that looks like, what pelvic floor prolapse even means, and how it can impact us in ways that 90% of the other investors don't. And so I really feel like that's kind of changing the landscape. Having more women having dollars to allocate to women's health companies, I think is completely going to shift the landscape. And right now, unfortunately, we're the biggest women's health fund in America, which isn't enough, right? I'm like, I want to be the smallest, because I think that this category is so great and so ripe for innovation. It has such great impact too, not only to women and their outcomes, but also health insurance companies that want to save money. And at the end of the day, that's who, we are selling these new technologies to, because this can really not only help save lives, but save money for them with unnecessary C-sections, unnecessary pelvic surgeries. And so they're really looking for us to find these new innovations. And so we're really excited to be in the market and to fund them and to be on the ground floor of the innovation.
Right. Talking about ground floor of innovation, Tam, I think that's a perfect segue to you sharing a little bit of what it's like to be a woman innovator in the women's health field. How do you go about identifying what is really ripe for innovation, disruption, what's needed, and then really how you kind of communicate that to the Dares of the world, the CooperSurgicals, the Steel Skies, to get them interested in what you're working on?
Yeah, it's a perfect kind of flip side to what you all are speaking about. And I'm so grateful to organizations and companies and investment companies as all of yours, because without that background and without that goal, we would fall short with just an idea. So I have a tremendous responsibility as a female surgeon to step up. I cannot accept mediocre care for these patients, because I am one of them. And we have a joint common pain and goal that we have to achieve. So if I'm doing a procedure on a woman and I know in my heart it can be better, I will go home and make it better. I will come up with new ways and novel ways and talk to my peers and talk to my associates and come up with a new way to do it. I think that as physicians, we can't just accept doing something because that's the way it's always been done as the right way. We have to take a step back and say, hold on. There have been very few innovations, say, in the world of speculum since the 1800s. Like, we can do better as a society. We owe women more. So I think that there's an ample amount now of female surgeon leaders, OBGYNs that are female. And I feel that the patients are so smart and savvy now and demand more themselves. And so if we join a partnership with our patients and really try to give them the best care possible, I think that sky is the limit with new innovations.
And how, go ahead, Sabrina.
Well, if I may just add one thing, because Tammy just such a great comment, and I just want to drive it home for the innovators out there, right? Like, sometimes making it better isn't actually that heavy of a lift, right? Sometimes there are small tweaks we can make that can very dramatically impact outcomes, right? So we took an antibiotic that's been around for a long time for bacterial vaginosis, and we simply put it in a better delivery mode. And what happened? Well, the cure rates are higher than have been seen with other products. And the outcomes are better. And just because it's a condition that, isn't life-threatening, I mean, we very much like Tam, right? We take the position of like, this is not okay, right? It affects so many women and it's disruptive and it causes symptoms that are problematic. And if there's a way to improve it, and it can lead to very serious downstream health implications, like we should be able to make it better. So sometimes I really want to drive that home for any of the innovators that are out there listening, that, yes, sometimes it's a moonshot, but sometimes it's just thinking, wait, there should be a way to do this better with technology that exists today, and sometimes even with drugs that exist today,
I
right?
completely
Totally agree with both
and
of you
those are
guys,
some of
because I think that when people will often say, well, how do I even start innovating? Well, it's usually that thing in the OR or in your office or an L&D that's kind of annoying you, right? It's like, oh, I wish the button was in a different spot. I wish, I had a better way of just a small fix. It doesn't, again, totally agree with you, Sabrina. It doesn't have to be completely foreign or new. It's just minor improvements that can really help patient safety, help efficiency of care, help care delivery. These are the key things. And so, the little things that may bother you are actually how we make some of the biggest advancements. We just acquired a company. One of our acquisitions this year was a speculum company that actually has a light put in. How many times have we all gone to the gynecologist and they put the speculum in and they're like fiddling around with the light? This is what the new product is. It's got a light in it. It's built in. You don't have to go fiddling and looking for a light now, right? These are just the things that everyday solutions to improving the care of patients are really impactful. And so don't miss out on those opportunities, because you're thinking that it has to be, the multi-million-dollar newest invention. A robot's great, but some of these other things really are day-to-day solutions that we need too.
And I have to agree, some of the companies that we like the best are people that don't call themselves innovators. They're nurses, they're doctors that can build a better mousetrap. And those, don't discount yourself. You don't have to be a tech innovator. You don't have to be in an R&D lab to come up with great innovation. And so I would challenge you to think about the types of tools that you're using, the products that you're using, even the type of workflow that your organization has, and how can you improve that? Because for us, it's great and it de-risks it, because we look a lot for product, not only product market fit, but product founder fit. So if you're a founder with deep expertise, has been doing something for 20 years, and you're like, listen, if we just did this and this, I think it would help XYZ, and it could help, generate greater revenues and have better outcomes. Those are the type of innovations that we're looking for.
And Maria, on that, so, oftentimes on the commercial side, we hear, well, if it's not paradigm shifting or disrupting, which is a favorite word, it will never get an investor. But I'm hearing from you that these small incremental changes can be valuable for an investor. So what are some of the things we need to think about when we're trying to tell that story to an investor, or to Vrunda, Sabrina, when we're trying to form a partnership with the company, when we have an incremental change, but we think it can be really big? What are some of those data points or information that is key to help you say, aha, I agree, let's have a partnership?
Clinical outcomes. I think that's number one. You have to show that even though it's a little tweak, it has monumental shifts in outcomes. And I think that is one of the biggest metrics that you can show. And then, can you do it, at the right price? Can you do it at a cost that investors can make money off of? Because at the end of the day, while a lot, we want to invest in things that we want to see in the world, we also have a fiduciary duty to, our own investors to invest in companies that are scalable and have venture returns. And so I think that's really important, just to understand how that tweak relates to outcomes, metrics, and revenues.
And to add to what Maria said, because she made this comment before, and I want to really highlight it and amplify it, because it was also such a good reminder. You got to put that unmet need in the center, right? So if you're super disciplined about what is the unmet need, what is the target product profile to address that unmet need, right? Can I achieve that? Then you got to demonstrate that you achieve it. And the reason that is so important for investors, for partners, is, a differentiated product. I mean, that's what we all look for, right? We want something that is truly differentiated because it's going to make a difference. And you can get all the way to an FDA approval because you've shown some clinical improvement that was enough to satisfy, maybe, our safety improvement that's enough to satisfy the FDA. But ultimately, in the end, it's got to make it to women. And in the US, that's all about market access. That's all about payers, right? Prescribers have to want it. I mean, I work in a pharmaceutical world, so prescribers have to want it. But payers have to make it, cover it, right? So she can have access to it. And what they are looking for is their money's in their dollars and cents, right? So they're looking at how does it affect their bottom line? So it has to be better, right? It has to do something better, but better doesn't have to be like, I can't highlight enough, right? It doesn't have to be total, like, no one's going to get this anymore. We've cured it. Better can be like, okay, you've made it where she's actually going to use the treatment, right? Compliance may have been a big issue, and that might lead to people having recurrent bouts of something, or you've made it where the outcomes are improved enough where it now is going to impact, right, how many women or how many times she's going to be affected by this, or how she uses it. Or for a contraceptive, right, are you preventing that pregnancy, right, efficiently, so that having a baby is a lot more expensive than preventing having a baby. So those are all the things that matter. But if you put the unmet need in the center and be super disciplined about it, that's how you can be successful. And I think for people like Maria, that's how you can make a great pitch, right, in the end, about your product.
On unmet need, I think, Sabrina, you had said earlier, some of these are quality of life innovations. So can you talk a little bit about, how a payer sees a quality of life innovation? And Tam, I know you doing minimally invasive fibroid surgery. Like, what is the point to sell to a payer, to the commercial marketplace, of why that's better than doing it kind of the old way?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first, and I can use the example of our recently FDA approved product, because obviously that's the one where we've done the most work on, having those conversations, right, in the payer world and on the product profile and on the whole patient journey experience. So just 10 seconds. So bacterial vaginosis is a vaginal, it's an infection in the context of its bacteria, but it's really a disruption in her vaginal microbiome. And so it causes odor that is very distressing to her. Women will lose work over it because they're embarrassed about the odor that is caused. But also, as I mentioned, leads to downstream health effects, right? Like preterm birth, infertility, higher risk of pelvic inflammatory disease, right? Has some, and surgical infection. So has some downstream implications as well if it's not well managed, but it's vaginal. So vaginal infections are a little more challenging to treat, right? Because it's just a non-environment that's meant to keep a drug in. So prior FDA approved products, when you think about now that indication, had some limitation, and it's highly recurrent, right? Because it's not really a sexually transmitted infection, some women are just prone to get it. And about half of the women who get it will have 3 or more episodes every year, right? So highly recurrent. So prior FDA approved treatments, particularly the vaginal treatments, the cure rates were in the 37% to mid 50% range. But so if you look at now, what is a payer, right, going to care about, right, for you to be differentiated? Well, one, you've got to have better cure rates, right? You have to be better from a cure rate perspective than what's out there today. Or maybe your administration is easier, so women are going to be more compliant, but theoretically that should have led to higher cure rates. Or you're going to be able to be utilized in an at-risk patient population that maybe isn't served by the treatments today, right? So if you're looking at like bacterial vaginosis, if everything else can't clearly be used in a pregnant woman, and that's one of your high-risk groups, that's problematic. Or if it's so recurrent, if it's her third bout that year, is it going to work just as well? Or, so those are the kind of things, that using this product is a very specific example. Those are the kind of things that a payer is going to think about, right? In terms of where to put your product, like how many of these boxes do you check? And the more boxes that you check, the better it is from a payer perspective, the more likely it is that they're going to want to ensure that your product is a first line option, and that they're not going to want to put a lot of what are called step edits or prior auths, ahead of it, because they're going to see like, oh, okay, cure rate's higher, you can be used in pregnant women, you can, deliver same results no matter how many times she's had the infection in the prior year. So that's why I, taking a step back, I kept sort of stressing unmet needs got to be in the center, right? You have to understand like, what is your target product profile, because it not only affects your clinical outcomes, but it's ultimately going to affect, the kind of things that a payer is looking at. So I hope that addressed your question.
Yeah, I think
add to that, right? When you think about what are people looking to innovate in, right? So it's making it better, making something already better, making something safer, right? There's so many areas of women's healthcare that need to be safer. I mean, the maternal morbidity and mortality crisis in the United States, it's almost embarrassing that we have such high rates as a industrial, as such a developed nation as compared to the globe, and how much we spend for OB care. The fact that we can try to make small improvements or large improvements to improve healthcare of moms when they're having babies is really, really important. So safety is key to that, right? So other things are efficiency, kind of like what Sabrina was talking about, making something that is a problem and using a different way to improve efficiency or efficacy of drugs, definitely really important. And I think Maria was talking about improving the efficiency of maybe processes that may be happening in the healthcare system, using and developing different tools or solutions to help us give better, faster care to patients, more access to patients. These are all areas. So don't feel like you have to be, oh, I have to make a product that is a little bit better. There's so many different areas of medicine that we are looking for solutions: safety, efficiency, access to care. So many different areas that you guys can really think about by being on the front lines and in innovating in those spaces to, in the end, what we want, improving patients' lives.
And also, I don't want to lose the idea about different business models, different ways to deliver, right? Before COVID, we were focused on things in the hospital. Now we're looking at life beyond the hospital. What does hospital at home look like? How do you have more remote monitoring tools? So that's kind of what we look for, is what's the future of healthcare? And it was, when we first started about 5 years ago, we were thinking, okay, maybe people will start using telemedicine. Finally, maybe they'll start, but we were investing in these things. Post-COVID, these are the ways that we're engaging. Now we're thinking, how do what's next? What's healthcare 3.0? And it's at home, right? Because we want to keep people out of hospitals. We understand how the risk of having people in hospitals. During COVID, you can't even have the amount of people in hospitals that you used to. So how do we give great care at home? What do those models look like? And if you are somebody who has been in the hospital system, you might understand how to transition to at home. What do you need to be monitoring? What does that look like? How can you trust the results that you're getting? Because you want to make sure that the efficacy of what you're getting remotely matches or is not better than what you're getting in the hospital. And so it's really being forward thinking as well, if you're looking with an eye towards innovation in this sector.
Tam, I think, can we touch base with you on, again, your innovation in sort of fibroid surgery and, minimally invasive surgery, I think has been around for a while, but why now has it, why has it taken so long to address a woman's health need?
Right. I think, you're talking about enticing payers with dollars and cents, and even investment companies to believe in this minimally invasive world, when in fact these instruments are more expensive. You have to look beyond the immediate dollars and cents for these surgeries. You have to look at the long-term cost savings, and not just dollars and cents, but the social cost savings and the emotional and physical implications of these surgeries. So essentially, I do a laparoscopic surgery and I take a tumor that's 3,000 grams out of a woman's belly button. She's going home the same day, and her blood loss is minimal, and her risk of infection is less, and her pain is less. So what does this mean? This means within 2 weeks, she could potentially be back to her routine, be it taking care of her family, be it back in her workforce, be it doing things she loves. And that has value you can't put dollars and cents on, because that affects half the population. 80% of women can have fibroids. So it's just a tremendous implication. And on a very important note, we really have to highlight the fact that there is a huge racial disparity on women who are minority women not being offered minimally invasive surgery. So by making payers accept this as standard of care and making it more universal, we can spread these advancements and these incredible medical solutions to women of every race and every socioeconomic background. So to me, that is invaluable, even if an open surgery may ultimately cost less.
I'd like to follow up with that with actually a question that came in on the Q&A that I think is kind of tangential to that or related to this. So kind of the intersection of improvements that address sort of the patient needs. So the light on the speculum makes it, quicker for the patient, and the clear benefits for the minimally invasive surgery. But what about with the physician need? Are they often the same? Are there differences? Is one more commercially relevant if it addresses both a physician need and a patient need? Just maybe, Tam, we start with you on kind of, are you always solving for both your need as a physician and a clinician and the patient need, or do you focus on one or the other kind of in your development process?
Oh, that is so fascinating. I suppose the original nucleus of my innovations come from wanting to help the patients. But I really don't see myself as like separate needs. In other words, we have a joint goal. Our goal is to cure the problem. And so the patient and the doctor needs really meld into one. So, not to talk too much about my specific innovations, but one of them is on imaging. And the reason why the imaging to us was so critical is because there is a huge deficit in women understanding their own anatomy and their own bodies. And if they can't understand their own anatomy, it's hard for them to know what solutions they have open to them. So while the idea certainly is going to benefit the doctor in an ease of communicating to the patient, it's by all means helping the patient as well, because they're going to be a partner with you as a physician and really understand everything you're trying to explain.
Maybe pick it up from the commercial side, Sabrina. Yeah,
if I could just add to that, I think, and Tam said that so beautifully, and how we try to look at it is where you have that if you think of your little, I'm not going to do Venn diagram very well, right? Your Venn diagram, that thing that no matter, what provider you're talking to, whether it's a nurse practitioner, the OB-GYN, whoever, that they're complaining about, or that they're worried about, or that keeps them up at night because it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't solve this. And when you hear the same thing, right, that's the thing that patient wants. That's what we try to focus on, right? Because that's what ultimately often leads to that commercial success, right? Where you've really understood it's a problem for the clinician. They recognize it, they want to solve it, right? In the end, I deal in a pharmaceutical world, so very reliant on the prescriber to understand the importance of it. But ultimately, like when she wants it as well, right? When she's needing this innovation or this approach or this new option, right? So focusing on kind of that intersection, we believe, at least at Dari, like that's really the most kind of holistic way to view like what is likely to really have an impact in the world.
And I could continue to chime in on this because I think that in the end, the patient is our focus, right? When we improve things for the physician, and I think it's also important for us to recognize, or the healthcare provider that women often see are different than, different healthcare providers that are more male oriented. And so one of the things that's really important is, as we see a change in the workforce of healthcare providers for women being women, some of the tools that were made, 20, 30 years ago were very male centric. Our hands are smaller, right? As Tam can probably say as well, our needs in the OR are slightly different as women surgeons than as a male surgeon. And so one of the things that, I love doing as part of my job is going down to the R&D lab and saying, hey guys, like, my hand is a little bit smaller and I actually can't reach the button that you guys have designed here. Let's move this so that, we can make sure that all of our surgeons can utilize all of our technologies in the right, correct way. And that's also really fun and exciting. And for a company that's really focused on women's health, for us to really make sure that, hey, do our healthcare providers who are also now women, and I think, Tam, you were saying, as more and more women are becoming OB-GYNs, nurse practitioners, PAs, and in those roles to provide healthcare to women, making sure we keep in mind that, who are the healthcare providers and how are they being able to use our tools? Are they able to use them safely? Is it making their lives easier? Because if all of those things happen, the patient only benefits, because then it makes the surgery go faster. It makes everything safer, right? So I think they're one and the same. Patients, innovations for patient care are in the end the thing that we're all looking for.
And I have to offer a different perspective because in an ideal world, that's the way it works. But what we found is there's some great innovations out there, but the doctors are like, I just don't want to, right? And we can't invest in something if the doctors don't want to. And so that's, I think, also kind of a major conflict and something that we have to deal with every day because we want to put the better products that are more efficient and it's more comfortable for women. But if the doctors say the product I use is fine, I've been using it for 25 years, I don't want to change, then we can't sell the product. And so I really hope that as this industry continues to evolve, that we can get more on the same page and that they can understand what's better for the patient is ultimately better for them, better for their NPS scores, better for retention rates. We want to make that happen, but I also think that's kind of idealistic and optimistic at this point.
Following up on that, I mean, I think that's getting to the key of customer discovery. So really knowing who your customer is going to be, who's going to be buying your innovation ultimately. Maria, on the women's health front, are investments or where investments trends going? Are they, the difference between, I'll call it direct to consumer versus more, medical, pharmaceutical, device related innovations? Like where really is the investment dollars flowing? Is it a lot of that digital health direct to consumer or more to kind of more established pillars of healthcare, or is it kind of an even spread?
Well, I think right now, post-COVID, we were seeing a ton of money just getting thrown into digital health and D2C. And I think that now D2C is cooling off because it hasn't quite panned out in the way that they thought it would. I still think, it's a very viable market opportunity if you have the right business model, if you can create a platform. There's a lot in women's healthcare. There's a lot of point solutions, and you can only have so many apps. As a woman, we have so many needs. We can't have an app for every single thing, right? So we're starting to see some consolidation in the industry, and we're starting to see people building platforms. So instead of investing in something only for vaginal dryness, we're seeing a whole menopause platforms or 40 plus platforms, because when you're over a certain age, it's more than just menopause. There's a lot of things that go into it. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing platform specific rather than kind of point solutions where we are today. Also think people are starting to trend more and thinking about menopause and over the spectrum of different delivery devices, if it's digital, if it's devices, if it's supplements, if it's medicines. They're starting to think about a sector and then all of the things you can offer within that sector. There's going to be 1 billion women undergoing menopause in the next 5 years. So, from the CPG companies, on, they're all like, what can we sell to these women to provide them relief, but also to take advantage of this huge market opportunity? These women are suffering and will buy anything off of the internet to help relieve their symptoms. And so let's give them something that's clinically backed, that works, that we can feel comfortable with. And, we can also, drive better outcomes for women's health. Because if we can get those women, just even a subset of them, purchasing these things, we're going to see more exits and we're going to see more money getting dumped into it. For people that aren't believers like us, they don't have a passion for helping people that just see dollars and cents. At the end of the day, we need their money too, so that we can further, create change and get to where we want as well. So I think the more that we start investing in these companies and the more that Cooper Surgical acquires these companies for great valuations, the more that we'll start to see the industry moving, and we shouldn't have to create the most groundbreaking thing to get funding. The men don't. They can create another fintech app or another crypto app, and they'll get millions and millions of dollars. But we're asking these women to create something that's going to change the world and giving them $5 million to do it. So I do think that more investment in the space and more exits will be helpful, and then we'll start to see more than just fertility, more than just, reproductive health. We want to start seeing menopause. We want to start seeing things that affect ethnically diverse populations. Like you said, fibroid, endometriosis. People are staying away from that because they don't care about that area. We focus on companies that have, access to Medicaid patients, because they're a huge, huge part of being a woman. They're a huge part of people giving birth every year. So what can we do to help that population? Because it's not all about who can pay $20,000 a cycle for IVF. It's what are we doing for all these other people that are, costing the system a lot of money, that are having the poorest outcomes. And we're really trying to think about, from a health equity lens, how do we make things more equitable so we have better outcomes for all women?
Great. So let's talk about money. I think that's a perfect segue. So, we talked a little bit earlier, Maria, you're saying, you have to see that sort of that clinical outcome, that utility, same for Sabrina and Vrunda, and then we have Tam, who's working on early stage things. So how does the funding continuum work, where we have innovations within kind of academic and medical centers or early stage innovators who are working, and how do you get to that kind of that key data set that we need to get the investment from Maria to grow the company so that it'll be bought by Dare and it'll be bought by Cooper Surgical, and we have that great product and distribution to the market. I mean, it seems a linear pathway, but we all know it's not. So how can we get that money? What are different pots we can pull, and how can we kind of like work together to sort of get those key data points?
Well, I would definitely love to jump in there on one point, which is, part of why we formed Dare was understanding those gaps in the ecosystem, right? There's dollars that a smaller company can access in terms of like SPIR grants from the NIH and things like that, right? That an academic institution isn't going to be able to access, that are a little bit different, right? And also just advancing products through that important proof of concept, right? How do you do that? And so, we're definitely big believers in that, collaborations. I said at the beginning, we put her in the center and our partners and partnerships in the center, right? Those are in the center of our sort of equation, like our secret sauce at Dare, because, partnerships are really the way to go. So if you're an academic, inventor, you're absolutely right? It's challenging to get the dollars that you need to advance it. And in larger pharmaceutical companies, although it's changing, I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago with Bayer, and they made some comments, and I know Vrunda made similar comments about Cooper, where they're starting to see the need to get involved with companies earlier, in the women's health sector to really help, maybe not invest as heavily financially per se, but help hoist them forward. So I think it's really about thinking creatively. We've definitely put in place some partnerships where we could get, NIH funding that the inventor could not get, right? And we don't even have the full license yet, right? It's just a creative way of working together to move it forward for women so we can get to the point. We've also leveraged like foundations, like funding from foundations that can support a program, and then private, equity. We're a publicly traded company, equity investment too. But trying to balance, earlier stage programs, it's hard to get equity investment, especially in pharmaceuticals and earlier stage pharmaceutical programs. Little easier for medical devices, just because the path is a little bit different to approval. But leveraging those relationships and being creative, right?
I would just say being open, right? As somebody who is in academics, I know there's a stigma like, oh, you went to the other side, right? Industry, right? And I think that when you are inventing something and you're thinking about who's out there, I mean, I was on the grant race as well, and that rat wheel of like, putting in 1 billion grants and getting, maybe one acceptance. And unfortunately, that is the process right now for grants. It's gotten really, really competitive. And I think so making sure that even as an academician, I think the stigma of working with industry is definitely starting to go away a little bit, but it's still there, so be open, be willing to take funding from people like industry, to partner with industry, to partner with equity groups, to say, hey, I need this money to get to the next stage, right? We've seen so many great inventions stall, take a really long time because they were holding out for that next NIH grant. Be open and willing to, collaborate with industry. And I think as industry partners, one of the things, having been that academic person struggling to like get my research funded, get my innovations funded, that's been a really great focus for us at Cooper Surgical. We have definitely made a commitment to, do research, have collaborations. We have a research partnership pathway that, we are looking to fund actually newer and younger inventors and innovators, because it is, I've lived that life. It's hard, and we understand that. I think the other thing is, we as a company have been committed to funding and continuing to fund and look at things that are women founded. I think it's really important as women to help women. We see the problems, and we have lived the problems firsthand. So we have been really lucky to make early stage investments into different companies. One of our recent acquisitions, Mara, was a female founded company. We have another acquisition in the works that's also very similarly women-oriented, women-founded. It's really important to make sure that we as a company really continue to support innovations by women and companies by women. So definitely be open, be creative, but be open to all sorts of different options.
And Lisa, I have to say, we have more universities and hospitals reaching out to us than ever before for partnerships. It does no good to have all of these great ideas stuck in a lab at some school, and it frustrates us because there's so much great work and innovation going on there with the people who should be making it, as opposed to just people in the world that had a bad experience and are like, I'm going to try to do what I can to make those are the people getting funded, not the people with the actual expertise. And so it really needs to be a marriage. We really need to start talking together and working together earlier so that we can bring these products to market and get them out with people that actually have the expertise to be building these things.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, just to give you some stats. So we have 8 programs in our portfolio and 4 of them have received NIH funding. Right. That is like not, and not where they all struggled to get funding where they originally were. Right. But now they're in a company that has demonstrated we have all the pieces to move something forward for development. 4 of them have gotten NIH funding, and one of them has gotten a $48 million grant to advance development. So I can't stress enough. And I really love that both, Vrunda and Maria both do the same thing. Like, holding on to your idea because you really want to get it further, or you're afraid of industry. Don't be. Sometimes there are a lot of very well-meaning companies out there, and sometimes we're just able to do things because of dollars that are available to us that are very different, even with the same institution like the NIH, that are very different from what you're able to accomplish in an academic institution.
And I will say, taking private money and get people behind you builds momentum, because I know if I invest in, an early stage, I have my friends that invest at the later stage who then have theirs and who then can take this to where it needs to go a lot more quickly than with grants. And there's a lot of opportunities and resources that come with aligning yourself with a VC fund or a PE fund, because we are, talking to all of these industry experts. We're talking to people who could be your customers, early customers, do programs and pilots with you. And we understand how to get this funded and sold, because that's what we are specifically wanting to do, is to get these companies to market and get them sold and get them out there. And so we're very much aligned. If you pick the right partners, right, you want to make sure that they have the integrity and that they, really care about the product that you're building, and that they're going to do what best serves the product and not really just best serves the pockets, but they'll also be able to push you in ways that other academics or government funding won't, so that you can really, make a big impact and get these innovations out to the people that need it most.
Right. Tam, can you share a little bit about your kind of entrepreneurial journey as a Weill Cornell clinician and innovator, and sort of, what are some of the levers you pulled on to help kind of advance your innovations?
Well, first I will say, I am leaving this panel so optimistic and so excited. I'm gonna send so many emails this afternoon. You guys are okay, but all the other feelers out there, because I'm telling you, from someone who starts with putting together Dixie, cups and straws and doodling ideas, there are so many doors that have slammed in my face, and so many no's I've been told, and ghosted phone calls, and I mean the list goes on. So I think as a Weill Cornell academic, I am incredibly lucky right now, because I have this unbelievable foundation that really is CTL and the BioVenture Lab, where if you think of an idea with your Dixie cups and straws, I call the higher ups and kind of the people who run these organizations, and I give them my idea and I run it by them. So I've immediately bounced that idea off somebody who really understands business and knows kind of the industry. And if it's a good idea, then they immediately start making connections. And I think that's really kind of the pearl to this. It's connections. It's linking up with your weaknesses. In other words, I'm a clinician. I know gynecology. I know fibroids. I know women's health. However, I am not very strong at all when it comes to, say, getting funding or business or certain aspects of that, because that's not my training. However, Weill Cornell has an incredible ecosystem where they will connect me to people in that department that can help carry me to that next level, or connect me to an engineer, where maybe I can't do the, deep learning for computer certain software. However, there's an engineer at Cornell that can. And so that's why being an academic is so special, because it rounds you out. It well rounds you. It's like your own little company that they can create for you, and then kind of help give you a chance to not have, forgive me, but like doors slam in your face. It gives you a much better chance. And then, of course, what's been so important for us are competitions. So if you look online, you'll see all these women's health competitions that are out there. And I encourage anybody who is in this space to just apply, keep applying. You'll be told no to a lot of them, but some of them you'll get called back. And even if you lose, you win, because you will make connections. You get your product out there, you're explaining your product, you're hearing about other products, you're learning how to pitch. When I first started this, I didn't know what a pitch deck was. You learn that along the way. And by doing so, you become such a better entrepreneur. So I really encourage asking for help, knowing your limitations, trying to grow, and doing those competitions are really great experiences.
Yeah, great, Tim. I'm just going to pick up on that. I think that's such a valid point, a very important point for early stage innovators to understand that a no can still be very valuable. There's a lot to be learned from the experience, the networking, the connections, and most importantly, the feedback from commercial partners and investors, because you plow right back into your research to help address those questions. So I think that's a key for all of our innovators to know. And thank you for highlighting the innovation ecosystem at Weill Cornell with CTL and BioVenture eLabs and Biopharma Alliances. We really want to build a kind of holistic environment to help advance technologies to get them to a point where Maria and Vrunda and Sabrina are ready to say, yes, let's partner. So I think with that, we have a few questions in the Q&A, so we can go through those. And then if there's any last words, and then we can end what I think was a really exciting and energizing conversation. Perfect time in Women's Health Month. Can't get better than addressing women's health innovation. One of the questions is, do you think it would be helpful in any sense if OB-GYNs were considered the primary care provider by insurance companies instead of sort of the structure of a PCP needing and then a separate OB-GYN provider? So in any way, how could it be helpful or not? So I'll throw that out to anyone who's interested in addressing that question.
All right, well, I'll chime in. Many women want to utilize, right, that clinician in that way, and some pretty much do, right? That is the only clinician that she sees, maybe once a year, maybe every other year. So, I think whether insurance companies like it or not, that's really what's happening. And I do think that, OB-GYNs are getting a little more comfortable, right, as a practice, sometimes dealing with things, right, that they can, because they're tangential even to something else that they're addressing, in their specialty. So, but yeah, it'd be great if they would allow it, but I think it's often happening naturally.
Okay, if there's no more questions in the Q&A, I think we can wrap that up. I hope everybody has enjoyed this special panel on women's health. CTL at Weill Cornell will be hosting additional special panels, every year on healthcare related topics. I think in April we have one slated for drug repurposing, both the challenges and the opportunities. Of course, in keeping with our long history and tradition of supporting women innovators and women's health matters, we have the Women's Innovator Initiative at CTL. BioVentures eLabs also has a Women's Founder Initiative, really to help foster innovation amongst the female clinicians, faculty, and trainees on mentorship opportunities, engagement opportunities, others. So if you're interested in learning more, please reach out. And I think there's a questionnaire in the, we are launching in 2022 our first inaugural Women Innovator Awards and celebration in June for all Cornell University, Weill Cornell female innovators. So please stay tuned for more information in the application process to really help continue to celebrate our women innovators. And I think you might be getting a questionnaire on what else you would like to learn and hear about. So please give us your feedback so we can make sure we're tailoring programming that is interesting and relevant and that you're continue to want to attend and partake in. So with that, I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much. This is a really engaging discussion, an area that I'm not an expert in, so it's always fun for me to learn new things. As a scientist by training, I love to learn, and I certainly did today. So with that, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.